All right, all right. Hello.
Howdy.
Welcome. Um, so let's see where to start. I guess something that recently caught my interest. Actually, we'll start with this one because it's more of a kind of a time relevant is the indictment and the rest of Donald Trump, which I guess he's not arrested and he's not in
Yeah.
jail.
Yeah.
Um,
There were
you
just
know,
proceedings that he had to attend
yeah, these are proceedings he has
yesterday
to
or
he has
whatever.
to go to. Um, and so he got out after that section kind of all happened. Um, or the session happened, and he got up and did a speech, and it's like a 30-minute speech or so. And I think for a lot of it, it's not necessarily most of it's not really all that new. um but it was a lot more pointed. um
You're saying he's energized and he was definitely more motivated, perhaps? They
he
seem
stuck he stuck
more
to us.
activated in the sense of like this State Department needs to go down. Like he's more intense about it now. Was there more sense of urgency about it, or instead of it
um
being like some sort of thing he's said many times and
so
I
it's
didn't listen to it. That's why I'm asking. So I'm just
Yeah.
asking you
So
what it felt like.
and a lot of the times, what he tends to do is he'll read his, he has kind of like a speech thing kind of going on the little screen that he kind of reads off of, but they're usually more like bullet point kind of things, and he reads them, but then he has
And
all
you
this
can tell when he's
commentary.
reading, and then he goes, and then he starts repeating himself while he's thinking about where he's going to go next when he's doing ad lib. Yeah, he has a certain pattern.
Yeah, he'll kind of say something, and then he'll kind of, ad lib off of it and talk more about it, give his own, put it into his own words, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
And then he gets back onto it. But I think in this one, it was more pointed in that he was reading most of the time, but it
Hmm.
was like a 30-minute kind of a thing.
So he had some stuff he needed to make sure he got to instead of wandering off into his normal into his some of the tried and true things that he wanders into often.
He wasn't elaborating in his own words.
Yeah.
He was more or less sticking to the script. He would go off and kind of do his normal thing, which I think.
Which is fine when you're at a rally, but sometimes if you want to have a pointed and deliver a certain kind of message, then it's good. It's good to control yourself in that sense and just like, "Oh, let's get this
Minimize it a
out of
bit.
there," right? Because
Sure.
you lose people. Because like it feels like a rally feels like a rally, but if you're not there itself, it's like, yeah, cool, and then you just leave, and you only get the feeling of whatever the rally is for the X amount of time that you can stand it before you get bored. But that period of time, if you want to convey a whole message, you can't just meander about. You have to use that time window where you have people's attention to get your message through and get right to it instead of being allowed to do whatever else. So
Yeah. I mean, I think his I mean, when you say like it gets boring or something like that, I
well,
don't really
when you're
get that
there,
sense so much.
so when I say boring is for me, I did find them highly entertaining during his election process last time. Um, but right now they are
It's a
not
lot of the
as entertaining.
same.
It's just the same stuff.
It's a lot of the
It's the
same
same
stuff.
stuff for whatever. There's nothing pressing. It doesn't feel like it's not a. It's like this is like preseason or postseason or like this is like in the break. This is in the lull. It doesn't feel as like it hasn't really ramped up yet. When it's ramped up at and you can feel it's ramped up at and it's kind of and things are dynamic and changing and whatever else and there's real sentiment and real energy, it'll be different. But right now
Mhm.
it's just like, okay, I got it. No, I got it. I've heard all this stuff before. I got it, no problem. And then you only listen to so much because you've heard it before. It's
Yeah.
not that you don't agree. It's just I don't have time for this. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna sit here
it's
2
it's
hours
this
listening
is
to the
the
same thing.
I heard your last four, and
Yeah,
they were all pretty similar, and so this one is probably going to be very similar to. Oh, look at that, it is. You
yeah,
know.
that's what I mean by boring.
Okay. Um. So this one was a lot more pointed. He kind of stuck to a script, a lot more, and he when I mean pointed is that he was kind of like more. Usually, he kind of like mentions the topic, and then he doesn't do too much elaboration into all of those things. Like when he brings up Hunter Biden, he'll usually typically kind of say, "Oh yeah, Hunter Biden, he's got all of this corrupt stuff, and he's got boxes in here and whatever," and then he kind of starts to move on. Is usually, but he's still he'll continue on the there's corruption and blah blah blah, and this is a really unfair and blah blah blah. Um, or he'll mention Hillary Clinton and be like, "Oh,
Yeah,
well, there's
and
the
then the crowd
emails."
goes, "Lock her up," because it's fun, right?
Sure.
It's just one of those things.
Yeah. And so, but he'll kind of like move on from it, and he doesn't like point things out, like specific
Mm.
things out. And so kind of what the start of it was kind of more along the lines of how like um he's basically saying he's not guilty because there's a process for this. He as looking and he kind of points to like Clinton and Obama and um and he's like, these guys they had boxes too, and they had boxes of classified documents, um and it wasn't against like those because they're presidential papers kind of a thing. And so like you can basically negotiate what his interpretation of the whole thing is like he wants to negotiate what the documents are that get returned, right? And so those could have been classified documents, and then he could say, yeah, okay, well, I'll set aside the classified documents, and I'll get these, and then I'll send those out. And so he's basically kind of more or less talking about how he's going by the book, what it is that you're supposed to be able to do, and there's a process for this, and part of that process allows for negotiations with whatever the department is that
Yeah,
attains these things.
the records that people.
Yeah, the Presidential Records Act or whatever. And so, and then he kind of points out, he's like, and then you look at what happened with Biden, and like Biden has all these documents, and I forgot another one is that he had documents in Chinatown, which I don't know how bad that is specifically, but when you're looking at like how he's receiving a bunch of money from Chinese and like from China, and then these classified documents are in Chinatown, which is predominantly kind of more or less run by Chinese people, hence Chinatown.
Yeah.
There can be like that's not a good look
Right,
to
because
say the minimum.
it could be easy to have interactions that were untoward that are hidden by just the fact that you're in Chinatown. That's what I mean?
Sure, there could be interactions, but there could also be um like having the level of access that the Chinese could have in Chinatown is much easier. It's not like if they're in a university, right, in Delaware or Pennsylvania, it's kind of like, well, that's kind of, it's a little more it's while not totally secure, it's more secure than a Chinese, than in a Chinese environment, right? And so, but if it's in Chinatown, it's kind of like, well, maybe it's probably they
So
have
when you say
more
in
access
Chinatown, will they have an
to it.
office in Chinatown, or is it?
It's not that okay. You know what Chinatown is,
Yeah,
right?
oh
It's
yeah, oh
just
yeah. I deliver to
Right.
places
It's
like
just
that.
kind of like a an area of a city
Right.
that is predominantly Chinese owned and
Mhm.
Chinese themed,
Yep.
right? And so, you kind of have more when you think about China and how they function and operate in their spying and in their interactions and this and that, like there's more of a chance it's just less secure for US interest. And if there are Chinese interests that are invested in the US, and where that would be
So
in
where
Chinatown.
but right, but if you just so for instance, I deliver to places just like that, but
Hmm.
yes, it's not official though. So
No, it's not
you have
official. It
buildings
doesn't
littered
have
in
to be
there. You have
official
office
though.
buildings littered in there that maybe they
Right.
are a majority China or they're Korean or whatever else, but there anyone can be there, and it's not necessarily
Right.
you can have your private offices not necessarily more at risk. So I'm saying, what kind of situation? Just because it's in an office building that is located within a 5 block radius of a lot of Chinese people, it's like to me
Right.
that doesn't seem. So I'm arguing against like
Sure.
how bad is that really?
Well, we don't really know. I mean, it's kind of just like, okay, so how do the Chinese typically, like the CCP, not like Chinese for like the
Yeah, yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah.
right? But like the government of China, right? How do they typically um get their foothold into things that they shouldn't have their foothold in? Well, they will insert themselves into businesses and other people's lives, or they'll have
It is
their own
true.
agents that go to these places, right?
Right. So I'm
Um,
saying, like, if his stuff was stored in the closet of a Chinese laundromat, then that's something, right? But if it's just
I
you
mean,
happen to be
I don't really
located on
know.
that street, so
To me,
so I
it's
don't mean to put
no,
out the
I get
fire.
it.
I know that Biden's are bad. I get it, but
Sure, I get it. It's the thing is like what I'm kind of pointing towards is not like this is what it was and then therefore this is bad. It's kind of just like, okay,
there's
if
just
you were to
more.
think
There's
about
more.
the environments, if you were to rank risk, if you were to just purely look at risk of these documents falling into the wrong hands, right? If the documents are in his garage, right? The oh, this is I'm getting like this. I was getting music. I hope you guys weren't able to hear that. Um, okay, so what I'm saying is like if those classified documents are in his garage, right? The level of risk that somebody who should not get their hands on them is fairly low, right? Because you're not going to be having people going into his garage of influence. They're not naturally around that area who would have access to it.
Foreign influences perhaps, however, in a residence, in a garage is not that secure when you have things like you have cocktail parties and a lot of
Sure,
people schmooze and family members and
sure, but
kids
the
running around
people
the
there,
garage.
sure, but
Right.
the chances are the people who are being invited to his house for those cocktail parties, they're probably not people who would be at risk and be detrimental to having looked at these things. Just
Okay.
chances are, right? If they're in a university, right, the chances are that these things being found by people um, who would have ill intent is probably not that high, right? They wouldn't have access to these kinds of things. If it was in Chinatown and you have and what we know about how the Chinese government operates is that
They could have their
they have
you're saying
strings
it's more
attached to
likely
people and
that
businesses.
there's Chinese influences wet in there where people might have other interests because of their land.
who would be able to benefit the Chinese government for having access to these,
Yeah,
right?
the
So
reason
if
why I
you're to
asked,
look at like the levels of risk, like, you know, his house is probably pretty low. The university, there's more people around
yeah,
there. There's probably a little bit more risk, but it's still probably not all that high. Then you go to Chinatown and it's like, well,
okay.
considering how China
So
operates,
yeah, I was
it's
asking
probably
because
a little
it
bit
does
more.
sound like what it's like what just because there's a bunch of Chinese people around, it's like it sounds like you hate Chinese people. But no, I understand. That's why
Yeah,
I was asking all the
that's not what
questions.
I'm saying at all. It
Yeah,
has nothing to
I
do with
know.
Chinese people. I'm just talking about like
The CCP, anyways,
the
even
optics of it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the actual risk of it falling into people's hands. That's probably not a location that you would want to have, right? That you would want to store classified documents, right? It's,
Yeah.
you know,
But this
so
is random. Why is Chinaman like not PC? Is that just not good to call someone a Chinaman? Isn't it derogatory? But it sounds like because you say Englishman and all the kinds
I
of a
think it. I
Chinaman.
think it's mostly just because of historical context. In that, you know, there's all
Because it
these
was
like
used in a
slurs that
slang
people
way.
would, yeah, slurs and slang that people would use as like a shorthand, or they would just kind of use it as an insult. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, because I
like
was
now
talking
it's
in a
like, oh, you're a
conversation and
straight
someone's like,
white
"Don't
male.
say
It's
that."
like,
I'm like, "What?"
yeah. It's like, oh, you're a straight white male. It's like, yeah, I am a straight white male. Like you're saying what exactly what I am, but the way that you're using it
Yeah.
against me is is an insult, right? You're not just saying that I'm a straight white man. There's a lot of connotation that kind of gets roped along with it. So I think that for the when people say a Chinaman, there's probably a lot of historical context
Yeah,
that
probably.
gets dumped into it.
I didn't realize it, and so I've said it a number of times in my life just talking about politics and things, and kind of recently, 6 months ago, a year ago, I was saying and some guy goes, just he's like, "No, no, no." I'm like,
You would
"What?"
just say Chinese
Yeah, yeah,
is
he
pretty
was
much
just
it.
like, "I say don't say that." I'm like, "Oh, why?" And then he explained it afterwards, says, "Yeah, I don't know why, we just can't say that." I'm like, "All right,
Yeah.
sure." I'm not trying to be offensive. It's just it makes sense. Englishman,
Yeah.
Scotsman, you say that all, and then you say Chinaman sounds like a normal thing, but I guess it's derogatory.
You know, when you that's a it kind of turns into a crappy kind of a situation, because it's like, well, when can that ever heal? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like when can that kind of connotation, because the way I view it is, um as so long as we hold on to words or the insulting aspect of words, then
Yeah.
those words will continue to have power. But once you kind of like strip those words of that negative connotation, it's kind of
Kind
like
of like you can't have a Hitler mustache because he ruined it for everybody.
I know, right?
It's like you do that and you'd be like, "What is wrong with you,
Yeah, what are
dude?"
you doing? Are you Adolf Hitler? Like, what are you
Things
doing?
just get tainted forever, and language
Yeah,
included.
yeah. So it's bad, but um
Sorry for the
anyways,
distraction. We needed some
yeah.
filler anyway.
So he kind of points out, you know, the and you know, it's not like Trump really even had he didn't have the he didn't talk about like the implication that I was kind of bringing up in levels of risk that it kind of poses. But I think that that inherently, just at least when I hear it, I'm kind of like, that's a strange, like, honestly, that's a strange place to keep classified documents. Like, I don't know where in Chinatown that you would have these like,
Well,
why
the
would they
thing is,
even be in
what is
Chinatown?
different depending on where you're at? Because Chinatown is a generic term for, and it's different in every place. Like some places, like in New York City, I'm sure it's like way different than like Chinatown is here in Seattle. It's way different. Like in
Sure,
Seattle,
but
you can just
like, if
you
you're a
can
government official, at what reason would you need to have them? I mean, you could say, here's like, you know, in you've got these boxes, I don't know, in like some in the hood of Chicago, you know, like, it kind of be like, why we're in gang territory of Chicago. Like, what are you doing having classified documents in the in gang territory of Chicago? Like, it's just kind
Okay.
of like, why would these even be here? Like in a university, it's kind of like, okay, I can understand how they could get there. If they're in your
I
garage, I
see what
can
you're saying.
understand how they could get there.
I guess I've never seen, because it's like I deliver to these places all the time, and so like I've never seen it as an increased crime area at all. I think it's
I'm not
yeah.
saying that it's an increased
Yeah,
crime.
sorry.
I'm not saying that
Okay,
whatsoever. I'm just
well, I'll
making
get
the
off this
connection.
completely.
I'm simply just making the connection
Okay,
of
got
like,
it. Okay,
this
this
is a
is all about
strange place
About
for
a
it to
Trump
be,
speech.
right?
It's about a Trump speech, and you're saying that he mentioned in there that this thing, and it adds another level of questionability to what Biden's decision making is, and Trump at least has it in his residence. Um, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. And so he kind of talks about a lot of that stuff. And then um he goes into the how he has received like millions of dollars. Him and his Biden,
yeah,
him and his son.
$10 million or something from
Yeah,
yeah
from Ukraine and from China and from,
Burisma.
yeah, with Burisma and others, I presume too. And then he also talks about how Senator Grassley has, not that he has listened to the audio recordings, but he talks about how there's a whistleblower who is who has 17 recorded videos or recorded audio of conversations between himself and both Hunter and Joe Biden. I think two of which involve Joe specifically. Um, and so I think that there's a lot of concern about that. And the thing is that's really interesting is that the guy that recorded it, he said that he recorded them as an insurance policy in case things went sideways.
Yeah,
Um, and so it seems as though things are going sideways. My guess is that a lot of this stuff is actually probably going to end up coming out sometime next
after
year,
the election.
not after the election. I think it's going to be, probably before an October surprise, but it might be during the primaries or just before the primaries or something like that.
So basically, as soon as so if the worst happened and Biden fell down and died or something, right?
Hmm.
If the worst happened and he weren't here anymore, I think that the story would
Kind of,
rapidly progress.
yeah,
We
it
would
would kind of fizzle
suddenly
out.
have all the information about all this kind of stuff, and it would just all they'd finally let it all release, and then it'd be like, yeah, but it doesn't matter anymore. So I mean,
Or it would come out as kind of like, okay, people, like now that he can't suffer the consequences of it,
yeah,
here's what happened, and all of this stuff is specifically tied to him, right? So it's
yeah,
kind of like, if I think that if this, like these millions of dollars, um was not tied to Obama or Hillary Clinton, um then, and it was pretty much solely pointed for Biden, I think then, and if Biden had passed away or whatever the situation, um then I think it being exposed would kind of just be, um I think that they would be more inclined to do it, um because it would not be implicating other living people who are involved in their reputations.
yeah.
um yeah, and it's
Well, I don't even think so. I don't even think that Biden would survive this if he weren't the nominee next time. So I think that if they had no more
mhm.
use of him, then this stuff probably would elevate. Even if it were, even even it were if it were to just evenly apply the law so that Trump gets in prison. You know what I'm saying? Like he, like,
Well, that's part of what Trump was saying in his speech, is that like, no, they never went after Clinton, and Clinton did exactly what I did. They never went after Obama, and Obama did exactly what I did. They didn't go after Joe Biden, and Joe Biden did worse than what I did because he had classified documents, and he was never even president at the time. He
yeah,
was a senator, and he had classified documents that were being stored, which is wholly illegal,
yeah,
right? And so it's like, there's the way that the justice system is functioning right now is very much targeting him specifically and not holding other people accountable as well. And what Trump's part of his defense is like, yes, I have them. I'm in contact with you guys. You guys know that I have them, and negotiating I'm negotiating this kind of stuff. Now there's other little bits and pieces of him kind of like, he makes really bad statements, really dumb statements of like, well, if you do, to his attorneys and lawyers, like, if you did this, and we could, and I think that more or less, I think that chances are they're probably more like, it's more like sarcasm and jokes that he's making when he says, well, kind of look at what Hillary did, if you did that, if you just kind of did something like that, we'd be okay. You know what I mean? Ha ha ha, kind of a thing.
yeah.
Um, as so I don't even know the seriousness of it, because all of this stuff is just basically it's out of context, right? And if you don't have like, I don't know, a 15-20 minute audio recording of that entire conversation to place those statements into context, I don't think that you really truly know what it is that he says, because he says things all the time, but it's what tends to happen is that it's other people taking their interpretations and their presumptions and assigning it to him with malintent. And most of the time, like when you looked at the Ukraine call, it's like, to me, it kind of came off as like, hey, you know what? There's some really strange things that kind of happened with Joe Biden. Can you, like, it seems like there's some corruption going on. Can you take a look into that? And I don't view that as
Yeah,
being like a trade
so
or whatever.
what they do is people take that fact and then they adjoin it with the fact that Ukraine has financial support from the US in various ways, and therefore it can be looked at as a quid pro quo. It says, hey, because if you say the statement, say, hey, we help you guys out a lot, I need you to help me out in this thing, then that's the problem. But if it's like, hey,
Sure.
you're just, if you're just talking to you as a person that you have good relations with, to say, hey, you are over there, you have access, I really need this help, if you can help me out, there's nothing wrong with that. But what they do is they equate it with the other thing, and they
Yeah.
try to call it quid pro quo.
And
Quid pro
so
quo.
even in that situation, because he was withholding stuff, but it's the way that I kind of interpret it is that Trump has been running the country, aiming to not dump our taxpayer dollars into other countries that are corrupt,
Mhm.
and other countries that are not doing what they should be doing, because we should not be supporting corrupt countries. And so when he gets in, it's kind of like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm not going to just give you this money, right? I don't want to just give you this because if you're corrupt, like, I don't want to give you money if you're corrupt. This is not an okay thing. So he's like, okay, I want to hold off, but I'd like for you to, almost in a sense, I guess I think you can construe it into a quid pro quo in some way, but I don't think it would be
It's
fair.
always possible to do that if you assume like very little. You don't have to assume very much. You assume that, well, he's saying this because,
Yeah.
and then you
And
can
you're
infer
assigning
something,
things.
and then when you look at it, it's like, well, if that is the case, yeah, I can see that. It's easy to do that. But in the case of Biden, you have him directly saying, "You're not going to get the $1 billion. Watch. Why don't you
If you
give him
don't
a
do what I
call?
do,
Give
what
me
I
a call,
want you
Bono.
to.
If it's not done before I leave, get on a freaking airplane. You're not getting the money. So
I mean,
he was actually doing the quid pro
that was
quo.
straight quid pro quo, like
Yeah, as opposed
demonstrably.
to they're trying to imply that Trump is maybe having some thought. Maybe he was nuancing, kind of like grooming the guy, saying like, "Hey, we know we have a really good relationship, but I would hate to see anything happen to that." That's what they're trying to say he's doing.
Yeah,
Um, and it's a
I think that
stretch.
Trump had
It's like
more.
I guess you can maybe read the possibility that there, if with a larger conversation, that maybe that could have been a concern on the Ukrainian side, whether Trump said it or not. But it's not something that was directly there at all. It has to be placed.
I mean, I don't think that it's in personally. I don't think that it's inappropriate to have a new leader of a known corrupt country to demonstrate themselves to not be corrupt. Hey, you know what? I'm a new leader here, and my goal is to clean this place up and rid the corruption from this country. Those are just words. That's just talk, but I want to see action, right? And here's a way that you can kind of demonstrate that you are true to your word, that you are actually trying to remove corruption. Look into this. If you pull this thread, you might find a lot of corruption that's kind of going on in your own country that you can kind of deal with yourself. But this has to do with our country as well. So there's a relation even in
Yeah.
that I think is not inappropriate, but they just want to misconstrue everything
Right.
into something else. Um,
Yeah. So they could even be linked, um, without it being criminal. Yeah. Even though
right.
I don't think it was, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think it was either. And so I guess to kind of fast forward through a lot of the speech, because he was kind of pointing out a lot of these kinds of things and just the hypocritical nature of what's happening right now. But he kind of at the end, and I got really excited. I'll be honest, I got really excited because he said, "I'm going to obliterate the deep state. I'm going to go after them. I know who they are, and I'm going to obliterate them."
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's music to my ears,"
Yeah.
you know, because it's clear to me that there is a lot of corruption that's going on um, at the cat
Yeah.
just in government. And so with the Justice Department, the FBI, all this stuff, and it's like that needs to get handled. And I think I mentioned this on earlier ones, is like that's what I want to hear from Ron DeSantis,
Right.
right? If Ron DeSantis is able to kind of point out how there's corruption, but Ron DeSantis, I don't think that he hasn't experienced it necessarily. He may have experienced media hit jobs kind of a thing, but I
Yeah.
don't think that he's been the target of
I
the deep
definitely
state.
do think Trump is more focused on that, and I think that he would get support, um, from within his party, from even not from the never Trumpers, but from more of the establishment group. I think they would get support this time around. But
Yeah,
will he get elected? We'll see.
I'd be surprised. I mean, I'd be, you know, I don't know how many um are really there, but I think that
I mean, you're gonna have people that Trump talks crap about, like the McConnells type people and whatever else. That no, they're
sure.
gonna back him. They're gonna back him. Um,
I
it's
guess the thing is though is like if they're the way that I would see it, and it's almost like gosh, it's almost like a little bit of McCarthyism is like
it's kind of funny you say that since we have McCarthy as a House leader right now.
yeah, but what I mean by that is like if Trump gets in, it would kind of be like if you are fighting against Trump, then you're a Republican, like you're probably part of the deep state. You've probably played around in
You know
enough
what?
corruption.
That is true, but I think that when blood is in the water like that, I think a lot of people will turncoat, and even if they're covering up themselves, I think they'll help, and then they'll be spared. That's the
That's their
idea,
only hope.
right?
That's their only hope. And they would have to basically bank on. And I think what I think would almost be proper, the way to handle it would be, look, if you engaged in this kind of stuff, like, I'm not necessarily going to hold it against you if you come out and you tell everyone. If you
Yeah.
tell everyone what it is that you did, what others have done, and you inform the people of what's actually going on, like,
Then
I'll give you a pardon. Like, I'll give you a pardon. It'd be like the almost like the Ghislaine Maxwell, the Maxwell kind of a thing. Is like, look, if she had, I wouldn't have cared if she had said, if she had just said, these are all the people that I took him to. If I said, and we just told the public, and we went after those people, right? The people who are not cooperating with this whole thing and who are sitting in the back kind of hiding, like, I'd be like, okay, whatever. Ghislaine Maxwell, her reputation is completely destroyed. Everybody knows who she is. Her life is like, fine her a crazy ridiculous amount and then just like, you know send her on her way. She's free, whatever, I don't care. Right? Because as long as we have those names, and we have the stories, and we know, and we can pursue those people, I don't really care too much about what she's doing, right? And so I think that if we took that tactic with the people in government now, who are like, look, man, I mean, I got roped in. I mean, I came into this thing with good intentions, but just the system, how it's corrupt, how if you're going to keep your job, you have to do X, Y, Z. And if not, then they're going to ruin your life. And it's
yeah,
like, and so I did these things, and they're not things that I wanted to do, but these are things that I did. Um,
I wouldn't care who burned in the Chilean in the Maxwell case if they were to tie if they tied everybody, which included some people that I really like, and they'd be like, oh, that's a shame. I wouldn't care. Do it all. Do
yeah,
it. Just do it. Just do it, man. If you have someone like
yeah,
I mean, it's not gonna be Ted Cruz, but if you're something like that, I'd be like, motherfucker. I'd be upset, but I'd be like,
yeah.
no, just do it. Just do it.
I know. I
Axe
know.
them
I
all.
saw. I'm a huge hip hop head, so I saw like Eminem and Jay-Z on there, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
I
don't
do not
tell
doubt that.
me."
See, that wouldn't surprise me.
Me
I
too.
mean, it wouldn't surprise me because in general, like the rapper culture in general kind of just looks at sex differently where they don't even care. It's scandal is part of the appeal.
Yeah. I
So like
mean, to be honest, like, their names may have like landed on the flight log, and they may have like, you know,
maybe they're
been
performing.
involved in some way, but honestly, I'd have a really difficult time imagining that
Yeah.
Eminem would even be remotely
I'd love to see
even
Prince Harry go down
remotely
for it.
interested in something like that. Like,
I'd
it's
love to
just
see
so
I'd love to see Prince Harry go down for it specifically because he's such a tool.
yeah.
Because he's implicated.
Yeah. Even Oprah is kind of like, I think that
I
what
doubt
kind
that
of
she
probably
would.
happened,
It,
what I think probably is
there's a lot
more,
of schmoozing with rich people that could have happened at the island
that's
too.
what I think is probably the
But
case
then
with a
while
lot
they're
of those
there,
types of celebrities.
but when they're there, excuse me, we're gonna have our cigar meetings now with a certain select group of guys over here, and then or whatever, or just backroom understandings with different people, and hi, I'd
Right.
like to meet my friend over here or my cousin or whatever else, and things just happen at these schmoozing parties where not everyone involved there is doing it, but they're schmoozing, and the unfortunate part is they probably all know, and so that's also incriminating. They are probably
It's like
knew it was
it's
happening.
an open secret. And I was talking to somebody a little earlier about, I can't remember his name right now, but he's like this British morning TV show host guy. And he had gotten caught. I guess it had come out, that he was grooming like a 14-year-old boy. And he's a much, much older man. So this is based very, very much so like a Kevin Spacey situation.
Yeah.
The big difference is Kevin Spacey was drunk, And he was stumbling around and he's kissing on this, much younger guy. So he at least kind of has the excuse of being drunk, and doing something highly inappropriate. But this guy was like building a relationship, and the thing about it is, it was an open secret. Everybody around knew about it, and they would laugh about it, and they would
Like,
kind of
did you
comment
get
about
him
it.
yet? Did you reel him in yet?
Yeah, and it's kind of like, what really kind of bothered me is that then the same people who were aware of all of this stuff, they come out in disgust, and they're like, oh, this is very
I
disappointing
know.
that this is what happened, and blah blah blah. And it's kind of like, how am I
It's a
supposed to look
performative
up to you?
response when they're caught.
Yeah, well, these are from you know um the people who knew but weren't involved, like, but they didn't
Right, but
speak
they're like,
up.
"Oh my gosh, I just couldn't believe it." That's reprehensible, but they knew the whole time,
This
and
is very disappointing stuff, and I'm sorry to have to deliver this information, that this is what happened, and
yes.
blah blah blah, and we're very
Like,
disappointed.
"Oh, yeah.
And it all just
Blah."
comes, yeah, it
Gag
sounds
me.
like it's coming out of the side of their throat. And it's just like, you're who are you who are you to tell me that you're disappointed? Who are you? Am I how am I supposed to respect you or care about anything that you have to say? How am I supposed to relate to you when you knew about this stuff for years and you never did anything, you never said anything about it? Um, and you just kind of went right along with it. And it's like, how many other people in how many other industries is this kind of stuff going on? Like, you look at Hollywood, and I mean, imagine how many people have knew about things. I mean, I've heard stories
Oh, yeah.
of
We know
people, and
from
they
the
don't.
whole Me Too thing where all the producers and stuff, that same type of atmosphere existed for this other area.
Sure, yeah. And there's so many. I've heard stories of people talking about like these massive orgies and all kinds of like crazy stuff that's going on. And there's all these celebrities that are going on. There's like really young people there, um and it's just kind of like that. What's interesting to me is that, like, they don't say names. They never say names. They'll talk about the stories, and like, this is what kind of happens. I was there. I was just more or less passing through. Like, I was invited to this thing, and I show up, and all of this crazy. I mean, it was absolutely insane, everything that was happening. But um they're like, I don't want to say any names, and I can understand to some degree, because there's like defamation lawsuits that can kind of come, because it's like, well, how do you prove
And
it?
plus, if you're like friends with their family and their wife, and you don't want to ruin their lives, and like you have
Right,
that,
you can end up causing a lot more problem. But there
yeah,
you go. There it is, though, right?
right.
Because if you are sitting there witnessing a massive problem that's happening, of that is that's damaging to other people, that's not their family, right? That's not their friends.
Mhm.
These are innocent victims, right? Of the circumstance that they were placed into. They are the ones that are being damaged. And you're taking them, and you're setting their feelings, their experience, their emotions, you're setting them aside in order to protect that person's inner
Yeah.
circle.
But I think there's also the issue is that there are a not small number of people that on some level think that um, kids of a certain age should just be able to make that choice if they want to. That they understand what they're doing, and so I think
Sure.
that people, even though they wouldn't say that, that's the reason why they might not turn something in, or might not be a whistleblower, or might just look the other way because they're like, yeah, whatever. I
Yeah,
mean,
but if
she's
you're
if she's
talking
getting
about
paid a
like a
lot of money for
13,
doing this,
14.
yeah. So like some people might be because of course you meet 14-year-olds and there's a wide range of what type of personalities they are. But like what I'm saying is that people's justifications that they can use
Mm-hmm.
are not necessarily in their own mind being like, yeah, this person is being this person is being like raped in a violent way and here against their will, like a sex traffic thing. It's more like, I guess she gets a lot of money from and gets to have sex with a couple powerful men, and that's not really exactly legal, but like I'm sure she's gonna benefit a lot from this. Like that could be in their mind.
Well, that's the whole
Like
Ghislaine Maxwell
yeah,
situation, right? Is she would find people, and her whole tagline effectively was, um, "I make it so that women can get this, so that girls can get what they want,
yeah,
and this is how you get what you want. If you want this kind of stuff, then all you got to do is
yep.
that's it. You know, you got to do this kind of stuff." And it's like, that's not an I don't feel like there's much of an excuse there if you want to.
Right. I'm just telling you that is how
Yeah,
you.
that's how they would go about
That's
justifying it. Well,
why
then
there
those
are.
people,
That's why there are
okay,
people that. I mean,
that don't
if it was
snitch on them, right?
if it was a sexual slavery situation, more people would have stood up against it. But they were
Because it
enough
seems
people were
consensual.
convinced on the blurry lines of the idea of what is the age of consent really, what should it be, and so that's where they are. That's why they're like, they know it's wrong and they look the other way because they figure it's some sort of advantage for um I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. Like, maybe they don't think that it's wrong, or they can scoot
But
themselves in, like they can take the position in that for their friend's favor of like, well, I mean, they look like a pretty mature person,
yeah.
I guess, this isn't so bad, maybe
It's
there's
like, do I
maybe
want
there's the
him to go to
exception to
prison?
the rule.
Do I want him to be a sex
Making
offender and go to prison the
excuses.
rest of his life when it's just when this girl is making, $3,000 for being here, or or whatever. So like
Yeah.
it's like it's hard to want to put someone in prison that for something where the girl is getting paid well to be there in the first place. So even though it's all wrong, it's all bad.
Hmm.
I'm just understanding the mind of why it is easier to cover up or easier not to be reported upon.
Yeah, the excuses that people might make in order to enable people to do that kind of thing. But those
Yeah.
are the exact things that are the problem, right? That's kind of
Hmm.
almost what the Me
Yep.
Too movement was about, was to basically say, we don't care what excuses you guys might have. This is not an okay behavior.
Which, you know what, I'm thankful for in a lot of ways. The Me Too movement just turned into craziness, but
Yeah.
um, I like that there was some sort of line of what is wrong and what is right being drawn, as opposed to what's being done today, where nothing is wrong if you want to. If like if there's consent, it's okay. It's just kind of like, what do you think is right? Okay, that's right for you.
Yeah.
So it was kind of good that they actually had some sort of standard. It took them hating white men for it to happen, but
Yeah.
they had, but they at least had a standard that they could then apply. That was a standard in the world. Oh, cool! There are some standards left. That is great. So that's the silver lining
Yeah.
of the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess the
Where's
next,
meandering talk to? So I have
yeah,
low energy today. I was
so do
feeling
I.
really, really bad today, and so I'm just sitting here letting you talk, and then I
Chime
had
in a little
to
bit.
compensate by asking you too many times about how to justify the Chinese whatever, and it's not really that great content, I'm sure. I wasn't trying to really piss you off. I was just trying to find somebody
No,
to
I
contribute,
don't
and
get
I didn't
pissed
have
off very
anything.
easily.
I didn't listen to anything today. I was feeling like garbage, so I tried to listen to music, and that's all I did. So
Well, so I guess there's another topic that kind of just landed on my timeline a little bit. Um, and kind of what I wanted to talk about with it is not necessarily this topic at hand that I'm going to bring up, but the pattern of this, and what people should really kind of like watch out for. And it's kind of narrative driven type stuff. This is a narrative driven article, right? So I'll pop it up. Target stores in multiple states receive bomb threats over Pride Month merch, right? And so in this, you kind of like, just from this, if you know about what's going on in the with Target and the controversy of them having
Yeah.
tuck bathing suits um,
Right.
near enough to the children's section that are in sizes that children can wear, that there was a big boycott and people are very upset about it. And so because people are upset about it, then
This
they would have bomb threats
Yeah,
that would
this
be issued to
presents
them.
the presumption, like when you see this, you think, oh, so conservative people are radically trying to um, attack Target. That's like the first thing
Right.
you think. But
Yeah.
and there's a lot of articles like this. It's kind of funny. This art, these, and it turns out to be a other way around, honestly. But
Yeah.
last week these stories were in the news, but only on the conservative side. This week they came into the light with the twist, trying to portray it as if conservatives were the reason, as opposed to the whatever, the alphabet people targeting corporations for not being pure enough in their responses to the protests. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a shame that you have to go down like 12 paragraphs to understand that, oh, it's not the conservatives that are trying to do these threats. It's the activists for for them not standing firm with their position. It's a shame. That's just how stories are these days. If they don't like the story, they write the story that they like, and then they either make a correction and don't tell you about it, or they bury it in the far parts of the article, so you don't really make the right conclusions because you only read the first 3 paragraphs.
Yeah. And I mean, even in this, I mean, it's kind of like, I guess, kind of looking through it, it's basically like, it was at five in 5 states, based on the chain's Pride Month merchandise. Um, blah blah blah. There's not any real threats. They didn't find anything with it. Threats came amid a sweeping anti-LGBT campaign, targeting corporations and employees, including inclusive messaging. So that right there is kind of aiming towards
Yes.
the implication is that this is right wing things, and then
You gotta love that ad that's on your screen right now.
I know, right? Should
It
get it
had
out of here.
Mulvaney on there
It's
while you're reading
crazy.
his article.
Yeah, we can even get into that, but I don't think we have enough time for that though. But um, and then it's like um, Target removed it, repeated threats against workers. So there you go. It's kind of doubling down on the conservatives. Um, it drew criticism from LGBTQ advocates who said the company succumbed to pressure from anti. So that's just saying that it was advocates, right?
Yeah.
Who were, this makes it sound like they were disappointed. They drew criticism and they were disappointed that they backed down, right? Um, the threats
They
sent to news
state it in
stations.
such a way they don't ever want to come out and say what the truth was.
Yeah,
They word it in the way such that it's confusing enough that you don't really get that. Oh,
you're
it's
not even
them.
pinning it. Yeah.
Oh, it's
Um,
them that's doing it.
and then they even talk about, like, we are going to play a game, um, and they basically say that that there's bombs were placed at 2 of 7 Target stores in the list, and closes with 4/19/1995. So like it's the um, of the Oklahoma city bombing. Um, let's see. Other places in other states received other ones, received similar emails accusing Target of. So this is where you kind of finally get it. Reported receiving similar emails accusing Target of betraying the LGBT community. The stores threatened in correspondence are located in South Burlington, Vermont. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
This is part of.
they drop a little line in there that lets you know what the truth is, but it's buried. It's like you have
Even
to read
that,
all of it.
even
Even
this,
that, you have to infer it. You have to realize,
yeah.
oh, so what you're saying, yeah, ridiculous.
Um,
It was very clear in the articles last week that or podcasts or whatever, wherever I heard it. I heard it or read it. So when you told me about it today, I was like, yeah, I know about the story. So it's just showing up today in mainstream media, and it's already been there, and I already knew the source, and it was very clear.
yeah,
But that's why they didn't cover it until they were able to nuance it
able
into
to
this
nuance it
word
enough. Yeah.
salad.
And it's like, and then they say, an email threatening those locations calls Target pathetic and accuses the store of bowing to the wishes of the far right extremists who want to exterminate us. We will not tolerate intolerance nor indifference. If you
So
are
we will
not
blow
with us,
you
you are
up.
against us. So it's not really until like the very bottom of this
Yeah,
entire news article, because now we're out here.
yep,
And
that's
it's
it.
like,
Yeah.
this is, that is prime media manipulation, and narrative driven, in order to lie to people through omission. I mean, lies of omission are probably among the worst types of lies, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And it's hard to tell because there are so many things that you could say always about things, and so there are 100, and so you can always argue, yeah, there's about 1,000 things we could have said, but we have this short, um, 90-second segment, and we can only put so much in there. So that's what they can use as their justification usually when they're covering issues. Like we only have so much time, and there are many different factors to consider, and we chose some we thought were important. And it's the reason why they think they're important and they believe it is because they have a narrative that they agree that they think is that they really believe is true, and things that
Mhm.
don't prove the narrative are just a distraction and not important. So they pick the things that prove the narrative because they know that to be true. And so if I'm picking these other things, it just is distractions from the truth. So why would I do that? So they omit things that would change what the actual truth is into the reality because their bias, because
Yeah.
of the biases built in.
Well,
And
they're more.
some people don't know they're even doing it; they just really believe that. Of course, they're so baked in, and other people are like purposely nuancing it.
Yeah. Um, it's it's pretty crazy. When they it's what this is it's just narrative control, because they're not too interested in, they know that they have to put the truth in the article, but they can bury it so that
Yeah,
most people won't, they'll just kind of like glance at it, or they'll get a
I
little
never
bit
get down
into it,
that far.
and then they'll move on, and then they'll forget about the whole story completely. And
Yeah,
then what will happen is that they'll just remember, oh yeah, they'll just remember, oh, the
yeah. The
right
conservatives are trying to bomb
is,
the targets.
yeah, the right
That's
is
all they'll
aiming for
remember.
violence, and they won't even have this as a reference point. This story won't even be a reference point. It won't even come to their mind. They'll just think, oh, it's all over the place. You just look at the news. I see it every day, you
Yeah,
know. And it's like, if people aren't made aware of the truth of things immediately, there's the saying, a lie can fly around the world 3 times before the truth can even get it tie their shoes. And it's like, that's kind of what this is. And so you kind of almost have to like have other people out there who kind of take these stories and they put them out in front of your face, and they say, hey, this is not right. This is manipulation. Like, you have to pre-contextualize it for people, so that when they see this article, they will be like, oh, I know what that actually is. And I can see that there's I can see the manipulation
yeah.
in here. But I honestly, I don't know if there's much. I feel like we're losing a lot of people having the ability to think critically. Like, people's critical thinking skills are kind of going down the drain. Um, and so they just kind of are like, hey, you know what, I've made it this far in my life with how I've been doing things, and they don't really give two cares in the world
Yeah.
about trying to change that.
I mean,
So
if I were Target in this situation, just some local retailer Target, not someone that's politically activated, but they're just running their own store, and I got and I saw this article and I realized what was going on. I know that they're not actually going to bomb anything. They're just being dickwads. If I received that phone call, I'd just be like, just hang up like I never even got the call. I would do, because otherwise you're going to sit there, what, close down the store for 16 hours for nothing. Ugh, jeez.
That's kind of their goal,
That's, yeah. So the goal
you
is
know.
you just don't receive the. I didn't receive that call. What are you talking about? I couldn't hear. It's, I mean, obviously you get in a bad situation if your target blows up, but
I see
you can't be held hostage by that. You
I
can't.
see a comment on here, and it says, "What great conservative people of faith actions." So like they totally bought into it, and they have 5 likes, and then somebody below that comment, they said, "I love how you fall for the media spin and never read the article."
Yeah.
News outlets in Vermont, New Hampshire, and New York reported receiving similar emails accusing Target of betraying, and then they just quote, and they got a thumbs down on it. and
Because
then and
that
then they
doesn't say what I
responded
want.
back. They responded back, swing and miss. And it's like, wow, you just have like you really got those blinders on.
It's so
Um
ridiculous.
it's it's pretty crazy. Here you go. Somebody else. MAGA terrorists strike again. This will completely backfire in 2024. Case in point, DeSantis fundraised here. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
the same person copy pasted the exact same thing they wrote to the other person.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Well, it's just funny, and plus that stupid comparison, like, oh, he did fundraise here. Oh yeah, so Hitler ate carrots. You eat carrots, therefore you are just as bad as Hitler. Those type of arguments are so stupid. Like, oh, you campaigned at Target, of course you're, whatever, a hypocrite or whatever. Um. Anyhow,
it's like a lot of people. There's another one. Where are we living? MAGA terrorizing. Like, it's just
yep.
it's just crazy, there's people, and it's amazing because you have there's people who read the headline, right, and they move on and they go about their day. Then there's people who read the headline and a quarter of the story for their own verification, and then they don't do anything and they go on about their day. And then you have people who um, do both of those things, only they leave a comment to express their disdain for their political enemies.
Yeah.
And they have no idea that they're just being fooled, and they're happy about it. They're perfectly content with it.
Yeah.
So
All
this
right,
is
let's wrap
it's
this
a
up. I have
crazy
no
thing.
energy and I haven't eaten, so
Yep. All right. So if you made it this far, drop a like. If you liked what you heard, hit the subscribe button. And if you're looking forward to the next one, hit the bell. All right, everybody. Have a good one.